Good evening, everyone. Good evening to those of you online who are joining us, and good evening to the students here at the Life of Learning Foundation. My name is John, and welcome to our Discovery Wednesday class with Guy Finley. For those of you who are online, if you are new and joining us for the first time, our Discovery Wednesday class, our agenda is one in which, in a moment, Guy will speak for about 60 minutes on the topic that you see below you on the screen. And after he's finished with that talk, we take a short break for about 5 minutes, and then we come back for a discussion, an open discussion in which the students here in the classroom are invited to participate, as well as those of you online. You can send in comments, questions, and they are relayed to Guy through me and are part of our discussion. And their purpose is, as always, for us to deepen our understanding of the material that Guy has presented tonight. So I hope you'll participate, and I hope you'll stay for our entire session, which should last about 90 minutes. For the students here in the classroom, just a reminder, if you have a cell phone, just check to make sure you've turned it off. And I think with that, we are ready to get started. So I will read tonight's topic and the first key lesson that Guy has written. Our topic is, "This false conclusion ensures there can be no end to our conflict with life." And here is the first key lesson. The unwanted moments that move in and out of our lives are like shadows that pass through a forest on a sunny day. They do not come as some blind force set against our best interests. Rather, they come to help us realize what our best interests actually are.
Hello and welcome, everyone, in the room and wherever you are, whatever day or time it is that you are listening in or watching this video. If you've never joined us before, we have a common interest in this room, as I hope that you share in it as well. And taking off from the key lesson that John just read, what is actually in my best interest? I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but what you think is in your best interest changes literally moment to moment, like a chameleon of some kind walking over a box of Fruit Loops. One minute, what's in my best interest is to find some deeper way to secure what I believe is necessary for my happiness. The next minute, what's in my best interest is getting rid of anyone or anything that has seemed to challenge it. The next moment, my best interest is procuring what I must in order to provide the best image going forward wherever I'm going and whatever I want from it. The next minute, my best interest is feeling that my interests have been denied and now I must seek retribution for those that have set themselves against me, so that, in case it's not clear, how many of you realize that what you call your best interests are mercurial at best, yes? And more than that, my best interests determine what I do given those interests when they're challenged, so that my reactions to anything that threatens what I believe is in my best interest is to meet that moment with an equal or greater opposing force, so that I can get through or otherwise control and change those things that seem to be set against me, and that I have no recourse but to be in conflict with them, and then do the best I can to resolve that conflict, ideally by overcoming those conditions. But if not, then acquiescing to them and giving myself a good explanation for why I have to pull back, because next time I'll push forward. Please, yes? You know, in some ways, increasingly, I haven't changed my habits much over the last 45 years plus of teaching. I still look for and wait upon certain impressions, and then as best I'm able to give my attention to the source of that impression, gather the materials that I intend to present to everyone who's interested in them, so that you can share in what ideally is an insight that has not yet occurred to you, but that once you see and hear it, becomes food for you, an impression that has the power to maybe change what you think is in your best interest. Because when all is said and done, this work, your spiritual work, is all about coming to realize that what you think is in your best interests is not. And that you don't really know what's in your best interests. And that's stunning for us to believe, isn't it? Who are you talking to, sir? I know exactly what's in my best interest. And right now, what's in my best interest is to put you in your place. So I want to look at this with you, about what produces the illusion of not only knowing what's in my best interest, but what I must do to ensure that I secure what I believe is required in order to reconcile the unwanted moment and exit once again someone at peace with himself, if not free. So I'm going to give you a little personal example. I know you kind of like those. So last night, I had, by the way, I'm changing the names and the places of the people involved so as to protect the innocent. Don't you remember Dragnet? You have to be 100 to remember Dragnet. Unless you watch reruns, and then God help you if you're watching Dragnet reruns. Sergeant Friday. Never mind, I could go to a whole deal. So last night, I'm using the word I as a personal pronoun. So last night I had a series of bad dreams, kind of connected, in which, for whatever reason, there was someone who was once near and dear to me, a good friend. And as unlikely as it is in a scenario of a dream, this good friend had betrayed me and was taunting me and saying cruel things. So that if you've ever had a bad night like that, bad dreams, you wake up and you are literally resonating with these ruinous thoughts and feelings, your body literally carrying over the stress and tension produced by what your mind gave its attention to while you were sleeping. Yes, please. So now imagine that that's a fact. You don't have to imagine that, but then the next step. Then, again, just to create a story, but it is based in truth. Then this morning I'm writing, I'm working, and this didn't happen this way, but imagine that it did. Patricia comes into my office, and out of the clear blue sky, she brings up the name of this person. Now, the moment that she brings up the name of this person, what happens in me? No, I don't relive it. I'm instantaneously livid and blame her for the pain that I'm experiencing because she has brought to mind something that I didn't want to experience the first time, and now she's made me relive it. I'm going through it again. Yes, do you understand that? So in that instantaneous irritation, how many of you know the instant irritation of being in any condition where you are brought to meet some moment that you don't want no matter what? In that instant irritation, all this nature knows to do is to look at her, this or them, and blame them for that pain. That's it. This is why your relationships, by the way, are so ragged, so grueling, because you don't know that's happening to you all the time, and not just with some dream you've had. And I haven't time to go into detail now. I believe I will Sunday. You are forever and always, as a creation at every level, including, God willing, you become any form of conscious of a soul. You are forever and always being acted on by forces that act on within whatever the substance is of your being, that act on what is required through that action to be awakened so that it can go through a necessary transition produced by what's acting on it. So there is never a moment, and this is what I'm going to go into more deeply, there's never a moment where you aren't under some form of pressure. Never. There's never a moment where there isn't a disturbance going on beneath the waters. But you don't know anything about the disturbance because all you know how to do is to look above the waters at what your mind is blaming for the storm that you're in that moment. Can you see that with me? Is that clear? So imagine you're me and I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear from you, leave me be, believing that you are in fact the cause of the conflict I'm experiencing in that moment. Is that not a common experience for you? Well, how long does it going to remain a common experience for you? Where any given moment can produce any set of circumstances, small or large, and it's all the same at that level. And in the appearance of those conditions, you are thrown into a kind of conflict that you have been in all of your life, only with different people and circumstances spread out through time, believing in every one of those instances that the reason that you feel what you do about them or it is because of what them or it did to you. And I want you to understand them, it, and whatever other weird, strange societal pronoun you can come up with, that it makes no difference. Nothing has set itself against you, that in its appearance, meaning that in the moment of that opposing force, hasn't been designed to bring the best out of you. But you don't know that yet, do you? That's what we're going to study together. How long have you been searching for a conflict, searching for a solution to a conflict that you have with someone or some condition in life? How long? Can you name it? Can you name how long? Well, you could say as long as I've been in a body. Every day, in one way or other, it's like waking up from a dream, only what awakened you from the dream isn't what you wanted to awaken you. It was something that awakened you to some form of identification and demand, some kind of insistence that whatever it is that's happening ought not be happening. And once you know through that reaction that life, he, she should not be like that, then you know exactly what to do you not, in order to bring about that reconciliation required because of their inconsideration or whatever you want to call it. Please? Why does a man or a woman keep burning instead of learning from these conditions? If you're angry, are you not burning? That's what we're going to look at. Take a nice deep breath. Can you blame anyone, anything, resent or otherwise, whatever it is that you do when you don't want something, without, in that same moment of blame, feeling as if you are entirely separate from what has set you on fire? When you're set on fire, do you think to yourself, who set me on fire? And what do I do? What fire company do I call to deliver milkshakes? No, it's built into the negative reaction for your attention, as it is seized by that reaction, to look outside of yourself for whatever is to be blamed for the pain going on inside of yourself. Is it not? And that in that moment, can you be set on fire and remain on fire, now listen, without one way or another giving yourself something to blame that justifies you being in pain? Do you understand the question? You can't blame someone or anything without a justification for that pain. So that anytime you are, in fact, blaming someone or something, it never appears and cannot, without a justifying nature, without some aspect in your consciousness that is telling you, yes, that's right. This is why you have to feel this way. Look at them. Look at this. Look at what she did. And if you can follow that, or let me ask you, can you see that unless there is something that is attending that moment that's justifying the pain because of what the painful reaction is pointing at, can that kind of blame and pain go on without me unknowingly being complicit with the part of myself justifying that reaction? Do you understand the question? Can it? Cannot. And so any part of us that wants to justify these negative reactions, that any part of us that wants to justify what we want to blame, is inseparable from the flames inherent in the consciousness that creates it. You never think to yourself when you're sitting there explaining why you're negative, what's wrong with them, why this should be different, how come this happened to me. You never think when you are blaming a situation that the very act of blaming the condition you don't want is the continuation of the consciousness responsible for its appearance. That's the last thing that happens to you. Why? Because in justification, there's hope of a change. Isn't there? If I can explain it and justify it, then by God, I must be pretty close to getting past this pain. Yes or no? So the appearance of the justifier, the explainer, is actually a way in which, without us knowing it, this unconscious nature first creates the condition that it blames outside of itself, and then takes part in ensuring that the pain and the problem in that moment just keeps rolling along. Because the more I justify the pain of what I'm blaming, the greater grows the pain of that blame, because it never changes anything. Have you ever changed anything other than your wedding ring when you blame someone for your pain? Has one thing ever happened in this world that didn't further its corruption or bring it deeper and deeper to the verge of war, that wasn't born out of human beings looking at circumstances and conditions outside of themselves and then blaming those people, that world, for the misery and the woe that it's in? You can't find a moment that isn't that way. So justifying the pain that we're in is actually a form of corrupting ourselves by convincing ourselves that we actually know what has happened and what we need to do about it. Now, I'll stop here because I'm beginning to feel a wall of resistance, and I'll just bring into this idea one last thing. Remember I said you don't know who you are without what you want? You don't know what to do with your pain other than have something to blame for it. That's the only thing you know to do. When you're negative is to allow the reaction to rule you so succinctly that it shows you why you are that way, and then by the grace of God, thank you, I see it, I now know what to go and do with this pain. And you're still in that kind of conflict. Out loud, yes or no? Yes. Any part of us that wants to justify that suffering is inseparable from its continuation. If you want to write it down, that would be good to write down. Anything in me that wants to justify the suffering born of blame is inherent in its continuation, intrinsic in its continuation. So I have a story, 2 stories actually, to help you understand some of this at a lighter level. You ready? Yes. Let me see you look a little ready. Not bad. Once upon a time, and at different times in the world, there were true schools. Some of us know from our reading and perhaps from our own studies and intuition that throughout the millennia, various schools have always had to kind of disappear or hide in order to perpetuate the teachings, especially in the throes of the deeply religious fanaticism where the only thing that was accepted, which is, by the way, the only way it is today, the only thing that's accepted is what is socially acceptable. End of story. But imagine a long time ago, there was a school for higher education, only it was hidden in a school of sailing, for sailing. So the teacher, an enlightened man, had a small school, and everybody that managed to get there knew that they went there because there was always going to be lessons that this teacher could impart that had to do with something with being on the water, sailing, all of the laws. And by the way, if you know anything about sailing, sailing is always the product of opposing forces. So imagine this young woman, and she wants to, well, here's what she wants. She goes to the teacher one day when they're out there, maybe 5 or 6 of them on this sailboat, 2 sails, and the sails are down and they're sitting in that nice water in a lull. And she comes and asks the teacher, which is always appropriate, I might add, "May I ask you a question?" He said, "Of course. What would you like to know?" She said, I want to move on with my life. That's why I'm here in the school. I have a wish, and I think at times the will to make these changes in my life, but try as I might, it seems inevitable that everything, and sometimes everyone it seems, interferes with what it is that I want to do, what I hope to become. Just one problem after another, and I'm not sure what to do. I can't set them. I've tried. God knows I've tried, she said, setting everyone straight. I try to set everything straight. Does this ring a bell at all? And some of you look like, well, I don't try to set it. You never stop talking to yourself. What are you doing other than being in an argument with your own thoughts, trying to find some way to be at peace or comfortable with what you can't reconcile and never will, incidentally, in thought? So I can't make any real headway when it comes to realizing my highest possibilities. And here she is, and she's kind of spilling out her heart. And what's more irritating, I hope you won't think of me, he doesn't seem to be even interested in what she's talking about. He's listening, but he's looking out at the water. And after a while, she says, "Well?" And he said, "Well, what?" Can you help? He said, "You know what? Let's get going." And he says to her, "Raise the sails." And she's really kind of irritated now. He's not paying any attention to her heartfelt question. but raise the sails. Okay. She goes and she raises the sails, and as she raises the sails, what happens when you raise the sails? The ship starts to move. And no more does the ship start to move because she's raised the sails than the teacher walks over to the starboard part of the boat and throws the anchor in the water. She looks at him, what are you doing? Are you asking me or telling me that you don't like what I've done? No, okay, I'm sorry. And he pulls up the anchor and he says, okay, change, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Hoist the mainsail, change the jib, get to the bottom. I actually was going to make a living back in the day when I was still trying to figure out what to do with my life because I had no interest in this world. So I thought maybe I can convince my family to buy this 39-foot sailboat. It was a beautiful yacht. I'll pick it up in Hong Kong, and I'll go to the Mediterranean. I'll just hang out on the boat and lease it when I need money. I was going to do that until we actually went out on that boat and spent 5 days on it. And when we hit land, I was walking like this. I realized this ain't going to cut it. I'm not born to be a sailor, it seems. And so everybody does that, and as soon as everybody does that, what does he do? He goes back and he throws the anchor in the water again. She said, I don't understand what you're doing. He said, exactly. But if you will and can see the following, you may be able to move on with your life and learn the lessons that are intended to liberate you to do so. What lessons? Want to write this down? Blame is an anchor. Blame is an anchor. You can't hope to move on, let alone learn any of the mysteries of the ocean that you claim to want to know, and keep throwing out the anchor of blame anytime you meet a patch of rough waters. Now, just for a minute, we'll imagine that you understand that. What if blame is an anchor? What if it is impossible for you to move from that spot in time as you are, if in any moment that because of what you see as winds set against you, you throw into the waters of life your certainty that someone or someone else is responsible for the rough seas that you're in and what you see as a rough patch that you want to blame everyone for. The minute that you blame anything or anyone in this life for your interior experience of the moment, you have dropped an anchor that until you understand that you've done so is going to anchor you in the very moment you don't want. Now, isn't that extraordinary? Have you ever thought to yourself, in the midst of blame, that you're anchoring yourself in the consciousness responsible for it? Or does that consciousness always have a reason why you need to blame someone? Listen to this, so you can move on from that spot. Aren't you glad that you have some truth in your life? You should be. God Almighty. Thank you, Father. So, in what does blame anchor us? Simple question. In what is it in what does blame anchor us? That's the question. Because right now, what we need to understand is that what blame is anchoring us in is some form of resistance to what we think is interfering with our best interests. Yes or no? Okay. 27 minutes in. Let's make a list. Now, if you've never joined me on a Wednesday night, we call Wednesday nights Discovery Wednesdays because we always look at a particular topic and then we dive as deeply as we are allowed to in the time we have and as our own consciousness will allow to see what we can discover about what is always an unconscious relationship with the very thing that we're studying. Can you begin to suspect that you have an unconscious relationship with blame? So, let's bring up the list. Drum roll, please. Drum roll, please. Thank you. Anything to get the kids involved. And I'm not kidding either. Name one or more unwanted moment, condition, or difficult relationship in your life that you're not only quick to blame for the pain it creates, but that you have also seen is likely to reappear time and time again. Name one or more unwanted moment, condition, or difficult relationship in your life that you're not only quick to blame for the pain it creates, but that you've also seen is likely to reappear time and time again. How about I'll prime the pump? How about anytime someone disagrees with me? Isn't that it's like something's inviting you. Blame them. It feels, see, the problem is that's how fast the irritation is. That's why I told you that personal anecdote at the opening. It's like that. You don't even know that irritation is there in you until the condition reveals the consciousness that carries it in any and every form of expectation that runs counter to your wishes. We're not present. There's just literally a constant pain, a constant pressure in this unconscious nature. I'm going to go into that probably on Sunday. But the point is that whatever it is that comes up in that, how shall I say this? Can something jump out of a hole that wasn't in the hole before it jumped? Do you understand the question? My wife doesn't. If there's nothing in the hole, well, two blondes, I mean, come on. Yeah. If there's nothing in the hole, can something jump out of it? Good. So that means there has to be something in the hole before there can be something that jumps out of it. Whew. So there has to be something in this unconscious nature that is there waiting to jump out anytime something knocks at the door and disturbs it. And when it jumps out, under whose name does it jump? Whose name does it have when it jumps? Mine. And I believe that I am the one who has jumped into that irritation. I'm the one who then blames and knows who's to blame for that pain. But what I'm trying to show you is that the I that knows who's to blame, that feels that pain and irritation, it only exists in an unconscious nature that has no inkling of a real identity until something is triggered in you, and then up comes that altogether painful, familiar sense of oneself. You following me? A couple more. They're already coming up, but let me go through my list quickly. I just have a couple. How about any form of blame we habitually identify? How about this one? How many of you like waiting on people? Do you like waiting on people? You mean when someone says, I'll be there in 5 minutes and they show up the next day? That isn't an irritation? How about when people, my mother used to tease me about this. Poor Guysy. No one understands him. Poor little Guysy. Nobody understands him. Because I'd be complaining about something or trying to explain my position. And then she'd go, poor Guysy, no one understands him. What happens in you when you seek someone to understand you or console you and they don't? What is your immediate estimation of those people or those moments? Hello? Instantaneous irritation, aggravation, frustration, followed by what? What follows the onset of the resistance, the reaction that comes out of it, and then what does the reaction do other than point at what it is that is causing that pain? And then you know from that point, you need to get rid of that person, you need to separate. One more. How about when someone interrupts you mid-sentence? Do you think to yourself, I just love it when people are rude? Do you? No, what happens when people interrupt you mid-sentence? And I understand some of us never have a sentence that ends. I get it. And sometimes if you don't step in somewhere, you'll just be listening for the rest of your entire existence, especially when it comes to complaining, or in particular, people love to talk about what they blame. They love to complain. Now, what is a complaint other than the unconscious validation of something that has been blamed for why you are in flames? Isn't that what a complaint is? I've identified why I feel this way. Now, having identified this, all I need to do is just get everything re-straightened out. How many of you suspect there's a problem with re-straightening everything out? There is an immense one, isn't there? On the board, Tony says, Tony, why do you believe this? She says, freaking white male privilege from those who are incompetent and white. Do you have any idea how you've been brainwashed? Where in the name of God do you come up with any consideration at all that the pain and flames that you are in that moment is because of someone or something that you have been convinced is responsible for your pain? That never even occurred to the massive unconscious humanity until suddenly it became the prevalent current. And a dark undercurrent it is at that. Whether or not white human beings, white males, white females, whether or not the whole the Western culture, whether or not it did what it did, what else could it do? What else can you do? What else can you do besides blame? And when you understand that, then you'll know why the world can't wait to put something on a shelf that everybody can blame in concert to prove that that's what's responsible for destroying the world. And I'll tell you what's destroying the world is ignorance. Spiritual, intellectual, emotional ignorance is ruining this world if it's not already too late. Because once that current is loosed and everybody gets on it, then the cat's out of the bag. The genie's been released. And now everyone has reasons and righteousness behind them for whatever it is that they say is wrong with the world, failing to see that they are exactly the cause of all the conflict that they blame on others. Now I'm going to get tough. Edna says, I feel betrayed. I feel blame anytime that I feel betrayed or rejected. That's pretty, isn't it? Anytime anybody rejects us. Terry.
Being accused.
Oh, yeah. Boy, all you have to do is just accuse me of something. Ooh, man. Even if I did it. No, I mean, and you already, the thing is that you always know that no matter what it is, you have some part in it. Nick says, someone who constantly, I love this, anyone who disobeys. I am your Lord and God, and I have decided that not only are you white, but you disobey. But see, it's true, isn't it? There was a cute line in the movie Open Borders, or what was it, with Kevin Costner? It was a Western. Open Range, thank you. And speaking of white whatever it is, he's fallen in love with the sister of a doctor there, and he's been a very bad person, but she loves him anyway. He comes back, they're going to get married, and he has to go off and sell the cattle so that he and his partner can buy the bar in that little town. And when they get up to a certain distance, you can see way in the far view the little town. And he says to her, it's getting late, you got to go back. And she just smiles at him. And he looks at her, he says to her, You really, you got to go back before it gets dark. Not a word comes from her. That he says, how are we going to get on if you don't obey me? Oh, God. Sweet God, when are you going to understand that you are not what you imagine yourself to be, let alone that anyone should obey you? But when they don't, I am convinced that I am all of that needs to be obeyed, am I not? On the board, Randall says, being seen as inadequate. Nick says, no. Juan, someone wants to talk at an inopportune moment. Translation, someone wants to interrupt me in the midst of my opportunity to shine. In the room, Ellen.
Being criticized.
What?
Being criticized.
Oh, yeah. Anytime anyone even remotely criticizes me, even in their passive-aggressive manner, which can be very subtle, can't it? I pick it up and, oh, man, I think to myself, you just wait. I'll find another passive-aggressive comment to make to you. And then they get married. Not being understood. Anyone who challenges my interpretation of what I know is nonsense. God forbid that you should challenge my interpretation. What makes me more angry than anyone who doesn't see the way I've interpreted things as they are? Nothing. You're a fool. This is it. You obviously are blind. Now, how do I know you're obviously blind? I am your Lord and God. I see everything. You just don't see the same way I do. I'm on another level than you. And one day, if you work really hard, I'll help you get to where I am. Namita, new situation, unexpected changes. That's a big one, isn't it? Anybody else in the room? Otherwise, John.
When someone doesn't do what they said they would.
Anytime someone doesn't do what they've said they would, when they're supposed to do it, in the way I want it done, and at that very moment, then I get negative. Did I add enough of that, John? Okay, yeah. Okay, so we get the gist of this, don't we? That blame itself seems, if you will, all of it has in common one thing, and that is that there can be no form of blame, no conflict with life that doesn't start with someone or something opposing what it is that I expect of them or of that moment when I come into that moment not knowing that I demand it. Back to my story, does a man or woman who has no idea they're blaming their partner for the pain they're in because they have brought up something that was painful, does that person suspect that they have a demand on that life, a demand on that person? Or is the demand sitting there in the dark and is triggered every time something runs into it and opposes, listen, the identity established in that demand? Because anytime you have a demand, you have a corresponding identity derived from it. So the real blame is always that something has stepped in and denied what it is that you're identified with, and that's what the pain is, and that's what the blame is for, is to prove somehow or other, confirm that you're wrong, it's wrong, I'm right. So blame, little transition here, I want to keep it as simple as I can. So can there be that kind of blame without comparison? Can there? So in order for there to be blame, the pain of it, there has to be some kind of comparison taking place in that moment. Do we agree? Can there be any unwanted experience that any of us have that isn't in somehow or other born out of what I have come into the moment believing is me, my ideals, beliefs, opinions? And when anyone or anything challenges, opposes those things that I uphold and believe to be true, it's the same as saying you're false. Yes or no? And I have to stand up for myself, don't I? And I have to justify why it is that I do the things I do. So the pain of blame is inseparable from our unconscious identification with some equally unconscious form of expectation. No expectation, no demands, no blame. And every demand, every expectation is lodged in this conditioned mind. It is inseparable from the thoughts that have been cultivated over time, and not just yours, but culturally, until I'm so identified and wrapped up with the cultural ideal, the cultural opinion, belief, that when anything challenges that culture, well, now you understand why we have the political divide, the insane violence that attends all of these moments. You know, you don't think to yourself, no, I don't want to go there. Let me go on. Let me bring in the next story. Ready? Another school of enlightenment, only this time it's a cooking school. Who wants to attend? Yes. A famous cooking school is run by this enlightened woman who has, over the years, learned to make the connection and the correlating ideas with the fact that life is nothing other than a constant intersection of what we would call forces, but she would say ingredients. And so knowing this about life, to be able to use the kitchen as a school, and given that she loves the way in which she can find, as I like to say, the celestial in the common, it's something that everyone who wants to learn at that level is happy to attend to. Yes? So here she is, and she's with one of her students. It's a young man. And he says to her, off to the side, they're not in the kitchen yet, I can't get past blaming people. The truth is, he said, my mind is 90% of the time occupied with thoughts that are all born out of not wanting, not just people to be the way they are, but even my friends and family. The weather. He said, it's reached a real extreme point in my life, and that's why I'm here. I don't know what to do with it. I'm in pain. What can I do? She said, come on. And off they walk into the kitchen. They walk into the kitchen, and there's enough, it's a kitchen for maybe 24 people, long tables, several refrigerators and shelves, you can see it. And she says to him, you know what let's do? Let's make a chocolate croissant. In fact, let's make 24 chocolate croissants, because that way everybody can have one. And he's kind of confused. Okay, you know, let's make croissant, but I don't get, what has that got to do with the conflict I'm in all the time? And he doesn't say it out loud because he didn't want to question the teacher, but he's trying to figure out, where in the world is she going with making chocolate croissant when I have asked her to help me solve the pain and blame behind all the conflict I'm in? But being a good student, he says, okay. She says to him, go get the ingredients, and he goes over and he gets the butter. That's the first thing. He gets the, I can do this. He gets the flour. He gets the cream. He gets the vanilla. Hurry it! He gets all the ingredients, and he lays them out on the counter in front of him, and he says, okay, you want me to start? She says, yeah, I actually do, but before you do, she walks over, she picks up the chocolate, and she puts it back in the cabinet. Now he's watching her do this, and he's thinking, what is she getting at here? But he doesn't want to say that out loud. And then she turns to him again and says, well, what are you waiting for? Now he's getting angry. Finally, his anger and blame reaches a certain point, and he just says to her, if I leave out the chocolate, it's not going to be a chocolate croissant. She looks at him and says, exactly. He said, I don't understand. She said, if, young man, in your first awareness of any form of painful resistance, you were to leave out of that moment what your negative reaction is telling you is responsible for it, then you would not only change the context of the moment, but the conflict you feel as a result of it. Can you make a chocolate croissant without chocolate? Don't you say so. There's no fake chocolate. I know there is, but it's not really good at all. No, to make a chocolate croissant, you need chocolat. What do you need in order to make a flame out of blame? What do you need in order to make a flame out of blame? What do you need? You need over and over again that which justifies that pain and what you blame for it. So that justification is one of the key elements in any form of painful blame. Can you see that? Now, remove the justification from the blame, and by removing it, you're no longer cooking your own goose. I changed the analogy slightly. Could have used the goose, cook the goose, but there's no goose to cook it with. Remove the blame, and you change the nature of that pain, including your relationship with it. You following this at all? Yeah. So he says, well, how do I do that? This is wrapping up the talk. She said, just take one element out of it. Because if you take the chocolate out of the chocolate croissant, you don't have a chocolate croissant anymore, do you? If you take out the validation and the confirmation of self found in any moment of blame, you automatically change not only the process of blame and the fire in it, but you change the nature of the observer of it. You change the actual observer of the moment when you take out of it that which the old observer was putting into as an ingredient. We could make a list, couldn't we? Shall we quickly? What are some of the ingredients in blame? Didn't we just go through them? Yes. What would be some ingredients in blame? Certainty. Certainty, for sure. Absolute certainty. Can you have the blame without the past? No. It's impossible. So that conditioning this consciousness asleep to itself can't be separated from the blame that it comes up with. What else can't you separate? John? Superiority. You cannot possibly have blame for someone or something without having judged it, without feeling superior to that moment. These are ingredients in blame, aren't they? Are you getting where I'm going with this, Sally? Comparison. You can't have blame without comparison. And you can't have that comparison and its conflict without something in you insisting. So insistence is actually a part of the pain of blame, isn't it? Terry? Denial. You can't have blame without denial. So denial is one of the ingredients. None of these things are exactly chocolate, are they? More like chock full of conflict. But you can see, as I bring this to a close, that look at all of the elements that are involved in blame. And you can see that is true now, can't you? So what did she say to him? Take out one element. Just take one out. He says, well, how do you do that? She says, don't feed the need you have for all of those other elements. This is what's extraordinary. You believe that you don't want the condition that you blame, yes or no? And I'm trying to show you that you actually feed the consciousness that creates it every time you involve yourself identifying with any of the elements that we just outlined together. Understanding that is what gives you, by grace, God willing, a certain ability to remember in the moment, like this morning, that whatever it is that wants to blame my wife or anyone else for this pain, did not come into the room with her. But it was the residual, the residue of a conflict that was generated by a mind that obviously wants us to be in conflict, or why would it create painful relationships in dreams? So that to begin to recognize that is to negate the usual relationship that we have with this unconscious, constant blaming of everyone and anything outside of us. And why do we want to drop all of that blame? Because every time you blame something, you drop the anchor in the moment that created that pain, and you can be sure you will reincarnate that consciousness, and it will never stop dropping the anchor until you what? Take the lion in the coconut. You take the lion out of the coconut until you take the conflict and your agreement with it out of the moment by seeing that you are complicit in doing so. Did we learn something about blame tonight? I hope so. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
Welcome back, everyone. We're about ready to begin our part 2 of our class with Guy, and that is our open discussion with him. As we get settled, both in the room and both you at home, let me share just a couple of brief reminders with you. First of all, it is our reminder about our weekly schedule of classes here, sponsored by the Life of Learning Foundation. We have a full week of schedule. Guy speaks 3 times during the week. He speaks on Sundays at 9:30 in the morning, our Wednesday Discovery Wednesday class at 6 p.m. And then he also speaks on Saturday.
Sorry, the audio is going out and go to webinar. It'll come back.
He also speaks on Saturday at 9 a.m. on Inside Timer, and you are always welcome to join him. By the way, not
Possible. So
There
I
we
hope you'll join us for those sessions with Guy. And we also have a Friday evening class at 7 p.m. that is a student-led class. And that class is one in which we students discuss the talk that Guy gave the previous Sunday. And so hope that you can join us for that as well. Plenty of opportunities to learn with us. Second reminder is, again, just that we are a nonprofit organization, and for over 30 years, the Life of Learning Foundation has been working to spread these life-changing ideas around the world, and we are grateful for your support in that mission, and we invite you to hopefully continue to support us in this mission if you indeed have benefited from these ideas. And so any donation you make is much appreciated, but today is also the last day in which if you make a donation of $10 or more, you can receive from us in gratitude a 4-hour CD album of Guy's talks titled The Golden Rule of Self-Realization, which includes both the actual physical CDs as well as a downloadable MP3 version of the talks and transcripts, and even a bonus webinar. And many of you have taken advantage of this offer this month, and it's not too late to still get that if you wish. You can go to guyfinley.org/golden if you're interested in more information on that particular album, or you can go to guyfinley.org/donate for other donations or other ways in which you can help the foundation. So we greatly appreciate your assistance. Thank you very much. All right, let's go back to the main room. Let's check in with Guy, see if he has anything else he wishes to say before we begin our discussion.
No, but look at the message Kate sent you, John, and then we'll pick up after that.
I don't hear Guy. I just heard Guy kind of clear his throat, so are we good? Audio issues. I know that Kate said we were having some audio issues with GoToWebinar, but are we good to go? Oh, Kate asked me to mention that we are having audio issues dropping. Sorry, I just saw the note.
That's all right. We are a well-oiled machine.
Our audio is sometimes a bit patchy today, so please, our apologies, and we're looking into the problem. But on YouTube and Facebook, it seems our audio is stable. So switch over there, friends, if you're having any issues. But all right, I shared that. Guy, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I just have one quick comment, and then if there's any questions in the queue, written or via hand, we can do that. When we looked at the idea of take one element out of the process of resistance and its ensuing blame, we made a list of those things that we know are in fact a part of the process involved not just in creating that pain, but in its justification. It's just a fact that if you take something out of something that you have been having all the time, you will notice that it's not what it was. That's all we're interested in. Not the idea of taking one thing out and changing the entire structure of the psychological system. But just, if I change one thing, I will not only see something that wasn't there before, but a new observer will be there present to what has changed. In that is the opportunity of becoming a conscious, conscientious human being. There is no other path to it, and we must start to see how deeply entwined blame is into the continuation of the conflict that we have as individuals, not to mention with the world that we're in. So that's all I want to say. And if there's hands or questions, we'll do it, John, and otherwise, on we go.
You bet, Guy. We have Jill in the queue, and I have a couple of written questions. So let's go to Jill first and get started. Hello, Jill. You're unmuted.
Hi.
Hi, Jill.
Hi,
Hi.
Guy. Hi. When it comes to blame, I tend to blame myself more and more. I see that I'm blaming myself.
Right.
And I feel a lot of times that it's related to comparison.
Yep.
And I guess I'm wondering if just seeing that is what you were just saying, if just seeing that sort of awakens something in me that helps me to just see it more.
Seeing the truth that you now have an intuition or that you suspect is so, that so much of judging and blaming yourself is the result of, in quotes, Jill comparing herself as she is to who she should have been. That dawning awareness gives you the first overall view of the mechanism of an unconscious nature that creates that comparison. That's what it means to take an element from it. Because now Jill will start to look at the moments when Jill wants to judge or blame herself, but it won't be the same Jill looking. She will have some new understanding that she didn't before, and that, if you want to, removes the ingredient that's so familiar to that judgment, or if you want to, and I don't particularly like this, it adds to what is being cooked up something that allows you to understand the nature of the chef, of the process. So absolutely, Jill, I will talk about this more deeply on Friday. You and all the men and women who are interested in these ideas, you are on, and it's perpetual, you are on the verge. You are stepping into, by the grace of God, another order of being that, because of its level of awareness, can understand the unconscious nature and all that it is complicit in doing. An unconscious nature has no idea that it is creating its own suffering. It's not part of it any more than an addict believes that he or she is responsible for the drugs they take. So when we wake up, and that's what this new knowledge helps us do, it gives us a sudden way to, you know what, I can look at this a little differently. I couldn't look at it differently before because I didn't have any way to look at it other than what my unconscious nature had provided. Now I see, I need to see something a little bigger, a little more. And as you do that, lo and behold, it isn't that the world gets larger, it's that you begin to walk away from and separate yourself from a totally self-limiting unconscious nature that can't wait to have something to be against, because then it knows what to be for. On we go, John.
On we go. Here is the first of 3 written questions I have, Guy. This question was left over from AB from Sunday. He asked, what of those who deliberately create suffering for others and their self? and somehow they obtain help from others to make their deliberate creation true. Should they be raised to rulers to rule over the masses?
AB, the greatest poverty that a human being has, with no exceptions, is his or her inability to command themselves. Show me someone who can be commanded by any passing condition, and I'll show you someone whose consciousness is an expression of that passing condition and a captive of it. One day, AB, God willing, if you persist with your work, you'll want to gag that on the idea that you ever believed that somehow or other there are these rulers of the masses who are ignorant and cruel, and that somehow because they're there, you have to be where you are in your relationship to them. Only fearful people want to rule. Only fearful people want to rule. Only scared men and women want to control the conditions they're in. Because that fearful, scared man and woman is living from a consciousness that believes the sum of themselves is somehow or other determined by the situation they find themselves in. And that makes you a slave, a servant. That makes you someone who is ruled by the unconscious mass of thoughts that is part of your conditioning. On we go.
On we go. Our queue is wide open right now, so I invite students in the room. If you have a question or like to say something, go up to the mic, and our online students as well, raise a hand. I see Debbie walking up there, so we can go there.
Hi, my name's Debbie. Something happened to me earlier today that really goes along with what Guy's saying, and it seems kind of silly because, we all do this. We all say it, I think. Somebody walked up a set of stairs today, and nothing in me was expecting it, and immediately this phrase came up, "You scared me." And that's what he's talking about. I became the victim of something that other person couldn't have known this. They didn't purposely do this, and I know, we just say it, "You scared me," big deal. But it's just, there's a little superiority in there.
No, Debbie, there's nothing wrong with saying to someone, "You scared me." I'm scared all the time by people. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you derive any identity from it and then find some reason to blame them for your reaction, that's another story. You scare me.
I know. I think, though, there's a little bit of a victim in there.
Well, you have to find that, but I want you to be clear when you come up. Otherwise, people can say, "Well, gosh, what can I do?" Right?
Yeah.
All right.
All right, I'll come on, Guy, and read a question from Susanna if you're ready.
Absolutely.
All right. Susanna just asked, how did you solve your disturbance when your wife mentioned the name of the person that brought up a disturbance in you?
Oh, it was a piece of cake. I did nothing. I watched. That would be taking something out of that moment. As you work, you'll understand this timeless truth: the observer is the observed. You don't understand that now because you always blame what you observe for the way you feel about that observation. Instead of understanding the experience of the moment is a reflection of the consciousness found in that condition, revealed in that condition. So there was nothing for me to do other than to sit in the quiet understanding that allows it to rise and then fall. Take the chocolate out of the conflict. Come on, Patricia.
Hi, my name is Patricia, And I inspire Guy in all his talks.
Yes, she does. An endless source of inspiration.
Irritation. Anyway, when Guy was talking about the cooking school of higher education, when he said, take the sense of self out of it, that lit up for me, because I've been working with blame and, certain things in my past and all that just keep coming up and coming up. But that I can do. I could say, where's the sense of self in here? Every time one of those old blaming thing comes up, and I know there's separation in that, and I'm very excited to use that.
And you will see that every last inkling of that sense of self doesn't exist without the past that produces it. And you are not the past, but it passes itself off that way.
Everything I could think of that I've suffered from, it's because of the sense of self.
Yep. All right. You're off to the races now. John, over to you.
Okay, Tony is in the queue. Let's go to her next. Hello, Tony. You're unmuted.
Thank you, John. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Tony.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you. I don't know. I thank God for Patricia in your life, gotta say. But I think good women and men are sick of the current situation. And I find when situations come up, we are called to respond and be the change we want to see. And we cannot do that by saying, oh, what is my fault here? What am I? No, I disagree with that. I think we need to evolve as a human race. And we are called to be part of that. And if we don't do that, we are relinquishing our duty to the Almighty. And that's my thoughts.
So, Tony, since you've asked, I'll tell you what's evolving in you as you speak to me is the rage behind the words. Love has no rage in it, and nor did you ever hear me say that we shouldn't deal as best we can with whatever the conditions are that are in our power to deal with. But what you fail to see,
I
Tony...
think love has rage. I think love has rage. Look at Jesus when he was throwing the people out of the synagogue.
You want reasons to be angry, Tony, and it's killing you. Your experience of the moment is the experience of yourself. And there is no other experience of any condition other than what that condition in its active movement produces in the passive consciousness that brings it up for that awareness that can change it. Instead of where we are, most of us now, that which is active disturbing what is passive, and then the passive finding reasons to hate what has caused it to experience itself. And you need to see that, Tony, as everybody does. I'm not singling you out. My God, the whole world is infected with this idea of my pain needs to be blamed on something. Change your nature, Tony. Change the nature that experiences life as separate from itself. Then you won't have to think to yourself, what do I do with this social, economic, or societal, psychopathic condition that I see? Because you won't be contributing to it anymore. And when you're able to see it in its entirety, you'll understand the real revolution doesn't begin with trying to be a new ruler of the old masses or find an old way to change the masses that are ruled the way they are. You'll understand that the real ruling of oneself begins with seeing the whole of oneself as one is and as they are responsible for the experience they're having. Then there's possibility, Tony. Live with what you're going through as a result of what I've said to you. Try not to fight with it. If you can do that much, you may see something that will help free you. On we go, John.
All right, Guy, Kate just sent me a question from Cece, so let me share that with you. And I trust she sent it to you. Cece asks, hi, Guy. How does one close their psychic door? Another question is, I think you've said in the past, meditation is unnecessary except in the present moment, and that's meditation. Other times, however, you talk about taking time into silence. I used to meditate in silence quite extensively and have stopped. Now I'm not sure if I should go back to it or not.
It's so painful to be confused. Particularly since confusion always finds something to blame for the conflict inherent in it. See, there's a way in which a person, and I spoke of it, I believe, on Sunday, but I'm not sure. Maybe the Wednesday before. What would you give? And believe me, there's a cost. To be present enough to yourself to realize that every single time something wants to draw you into confusion, because it feels like it's imperative that I understand this, that I get this, that I do this, so that instead of that pressure pushing you deeper and deeper into more convoluted thoughts and feelings, instead of that doing that, you understand the moment is speaking to me. I can't hear it if I'm talking to myself. The moment is showing me everything that I need to see about the nature of this experience, but I can't see that the nature of the experience is the consciousness it's reflected in if I'm busy trying to see my way out of the problem that thought is telling me I've fallen into. It's extraordinary, isn't it? In one respect, you'll see that everything about your spiritual work is leading you into a simplicity, a singularity, a simplicity, and an understanding that passes, the peace that passes understanding, because you don't have to think about anymore what to do with your life. You want to meditate, meditate. But let everything that you do participate in the evolution inherent in each new revelation of yourself in that moment. When you are present to yourself, you are having yourself revealed to you by the forces that are acting on you. You are a revelation. And if you participate in the revelation of the whole of yourself, then the whole of yourself that has been revealed in that moment, warts and all, has evolved. And what's evolved is that you're no longer identified with yourself the way you were before. And in the end, what is liberation other than the glorious end of this insane identification that we have with the images and the beliefs and the ideals and the social values that we believe somehow lead to freedom? They don't. And the confusion starts to fall away when you start to fall out of love with that nature that's always trying to save itself through one thing or another. Anything else, John?
No, Guy, that's all. I turn it over to you.
And I turn it over to goodbye.